Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're exploring a seriously practical framework for managing interpersonal conflict, pulled straight from Salima's weekly receipts. Look, if you've ever walked away from an argument feeling literally exhausted and totally drained, you are going to love this strategy. It's all about separating your ego from the actual outcome you want. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. The author sets a deeply introspective tone right out of the gate here, hitting us with that classic reminder: an unexamined life is not worth living. So we're not just looking at some generic checklist on how to win an argument today. We're looking at how to actively examine our own internal reactions, It's about personal growth and fundamentally shifting how we deal with difficult people on a day-to-day basis. The author starts us off with this fantastic flashback to a few years ago. She was living in a condo in a foreign country and needed some routine paperwork processed. So she walks into the management office, and behind the desk is this woman with just an incredibly arrogant attitude. It was just the two of them in the room, and the author notes that her own ego immediately flared up to match this manager's bad energy. And the result? A total disastrous collision of egos. They clashed, and absolutely zero got accomplished. But here is where it gets interesting. As she walked away empty-handed, she had this massive realization and asked herself a brilliant question. What could you give her that would make her do the job she is already paid to do? She looked at the actual facts. She was a foreigner, she desperately needed this paperwork done, and complaining to someone higher up? Yeah, that just wasn't an option. She realized this manager simply wanted to feel important, and recognizing that was a massive shift from operating purely out of ego to operating out of sheer strategy. Armed with that realization, she decided to walk right back into that office. But this time, she completely lowered her temperature. She changed her posture, approached with humility, and verbally reaffirmed the manager's position of authority. And guess what happened? Humility gets results. The manager processed the document with a genuine smile. By just giving the manager that fleeting feeling of importance she was craving, the author got exactly what she needed. It's a powerful foundational lesson, and it completely sets the stage for our main story today. All right, fast forward to the present week. The author found herself dealing with a former tenant. We'll just call him Mr. K. She had actively chosen not to renew his lease. Well, when he finally moved out, he decided to take some property that belonged to the rental, property he absolutely knew did not belong to him. Specifically, he took 2 expensive electric boosters. Now, these were bought to handle the really tricky electricity situation for air conditioning units in Guinea. They were pricey, and getting them back was absolutely crucial. The catch? The author's nephew had already tried to get them back, but he and Mr. K had this massive clash of strong personalities. Neither guy was willing to yield an inch, the attempt completely failed, and so the problem landed squarely back on the author's desk. Man, we can probably all relate to the pure frustration she felt here, right? She openly admits she was genuinely, deeply pissed off. I mean, it was her property, her money, and her rights were totally clear. Her ego had already drafted this fiery, scathing text message in her head, completely ready to put Mr. K in his place. But before she picked up her phone, she just stopped. She took what she describes as 1,000 deep breaths. She deliberately chose to completely slow down the entire process before reacting. So the crucial point is asking the right questions before you act. The very first one: what outcome do I actually want? There is immense power in this pause. When you're boiling mad, your ego just wants to lash out, right? It wants to prove a point. But forcing yourself to answer this one specific question completely derails the anger. It forcefully redirects your brain toward actual tangible results. And then comes the second critical question: what kind of conversation do I want to have? These 2 questions alone completely shifted the author away from a pointless war of words. Instead of focusing on how right she was or how horribly wrong Mr. K was, she focused entirely on conflict resolution. Just think about how many agonizing arguments we could all avoid if we just stopped to ask what kind of conversation we actually wanted to participate in. By answering those questions honestly, she established a few very simple outcomes. She wanted the boosters returned undamaged, she wanted her peace intact, and she wanted absolutely no lingering drama with a guy she literally never had to see again. Having those incredibly clear goals made it super easy to draft a warm, polite text message just asking if he could kindly arrange to return them, or even offering to collect them herself. Now here is where the true test of patience kicks in. Day 1, she sends the polite message. Mr. K promises to drop them off, but big surprise, he doesn't. Day 3 rolls around. She messages him again with the exact same warmth. He apologizes, gives another promise, and it's another no-show. Inside, she is boiling. but she absolutely refused to let her ego escalate things. Finally, day 5 arrives, and Mr. K personally hands the boosters over to her sister's housekeeper. Boom. Total success. And this brilliantly illustrates the central metaphor of our source material today, the rope on the floor. Think about any conflict between two people like a rope lying on the floor. Tension only begins to build the precise moment one person picks up one end and the other person picks up the opposite end, right? The harder both people pull, the worse the conflict gets. But if one person simply refuses to pick up their end of the rope, there is zero tension. There is literally nothing to pull against. It is so vital to understand this. Not picking up the rope is a remarkably powerful decision. Refusing to fight is not a sign of weakness. Actually, scratch that. It's the exact opposite. It's a strategic, calculated choice that completely diffuses tension, exactly like it did with Mr. K's really frustrating delays. Her ego desperately wanted to grab that rope and yank it hard when he flaked on day 1 and day 3. But her wisdom chose to leave the rope exactly where it was. Now, we do need to add a quick layer of complexity here and address a key nuance from the source. It's all about unlearning what she calls small money habits. Look, dropping your ego and leaving the rope on the floor does not mean letting people walk all over you. It doesn't mean you just casually dismiss lost property or give up what is rightfully yours just to keep the peace, you know? Her brother hit the nail on the head when he pushed for their return. You really shouldn't just wave it off and say, "Oh, whatever, I'll just buy it again." Every dollar you dismiss is a dollar you are fundamentally teaching yourself not to value. You must absolutely fight for your rights and your property. But, and here is the kicker, you have to do it without your ego. You have to unlearn that bad habit of letting things slide just to avoid conflict, and instead, learn how to navigate that conflict intelligently. So, how do we actually apply this in our own lives? Well, here is a final, highly pragmatic mental checklist you can run through before your next negotiation, confrontation, or right before you hit send on that email you've been dreading. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this simple 3-step checklist keeps your ego securely fastened in the back seat. Step 1, decide the outcome you actually want. Step 2, decide the kind of conversation to have. And step 3, let those answers completely dictate your tone. If you follow these steps, they tell you exactly when to push, exactly when to stay soft, and honestly, they practically write the difficult message for you. And that brings us to the absolute core takeaway of our explainer. It's this direct comparison of the two forces constantly battling inside you during any conflict, your ego versus your wisdom. Your ego is loud. It desperately wants to be right. And as we saw with that condo manager, it usually yields absolutely zero results. But your wisdom is quiet, it's highly strategic, and it solely, completely wants results. Which leaves us with one final, pretty heavy thought to ponder. You get to choose which one drives. Which will it be? The next time you feel your blood boiling and your thumbs are just rushing to type out some angry reply, ask yourself who is actually grabbing the steering wheel right now? Your ego or your wisdom? I really hope this framework helps you secure your own peace and get the results you actually want this week. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll catch you next time.